So if you plot all the sci-fi movies on a timeline, right now we're between Soylent Green and 12 Monkeys. AI video is so next level all of a sudden, it looks like there's a tree with bamboo with mushrooms dancing. And I'm not on anything, promise. The CEO of NVIDIA, world's largest company, says that digital biology will be the next revolution. And that kind of lines up with Ray Kurzweil's new book, The Singularity is Near, which talked about how biology is going digital. So it got me thinking, got the wheels turning. Until I got totally off track when I found this super sick stained glass music video. I mean, come on, the trees, the flowers, the fish, that's just new stuff. OpenAI is working on new reasoning technology under the codename Strawberry. This is leaked information, super secret, might even be Q-Star, don't know, we're gonna investigate. We're another step closer to bringing back to the Earth the woolly mammoth. Humans first hunted them to extinction, but now the genome's been reconstructed in 3D. There's a new mind-reading AI that can reconstruct what you're looking at with surprising accuracy. New research shows that stories written by AI with the help of humans are more creative than humans alone. Jonathan Haidt looks into what happens when the internet supposedly gives everybody a voice, but the disempowered really aren't as equal as everybody else. Venture capitalist Andreessen Horowitz actually bought 20,000 NVIDIA GPUs to help win the best AI deals. Turns out AI lie detectors are better than humans at spotting lies, but it looks like it might come at the cost of trust and social bond. There's a new quantum computer that absolutely smashed the previous quantum supremacy record. Martin Knapp wrote a piece about how the world is going to have a two-tier system thanks to AI, haves and have-nots. And in a piece of news that hit me super hard because I love bumblebees, I'm finding out that the climate crisis is cooking baby bumblebees in their nest. Not cool. So a lot of movies that took place in the future when I was growing up are now in the past. Sadly, Back to the Future 2, it took place in 2015. That's like really old now. RoboCop, Blade Runner, Postman, Clockwork Orange, those are all in the past. Right now, we just passed Soylent Green. Not sure how accurate that one was. The next one I recognize is going to be 12 Monkeys, and then V for Vendetta, which I don't even remember being like a future movie, but I guess it was. 2054, we hit Minority Report. I think we're going to beat that one. I see Pre-Crime happening 2045 at the latest. Total Recall 2084. That one might not be too far off. Matrix 2199. Yeah, it could be about right. When humans become batteries for robots, yeah. Fifth Element 2220 seems a little far. Star Trek, I mean, we're, at that point, we've made first contact. Many species, we're all over the galaxy. 2387, could probably scoot it up a little bit. Idiocracy, probably the greatest movie of all time. I don't know if you know about that movie, but you should check it out if you haven't seen it. It's like, I guess it was a sleeper when it hit the theaters, but it's like totally had its renaissance. Planet of the Ape and Dune, totally off the chart. But think of how fast the future is coming if we can make videos like this today. What am I watching? Is it mushrooms? Is it a tree? Is it a dancer? It's so fluid. See, this is great because I've never done mushrooms, so now I can see the kind of things you can see after eating magic mushrooms, but just using AI. Wonderful. It's like an insight into the drug. I'm like, yep, confirmed. But now I can see all the wonder people have been raving about. I mean, in the last video when we watched those dancing French fries, it was pretty cool, but there's some depth and realism to this that just is like, ooh. CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, just talked about how biology is becoming digital. Same thing in Ray Kurzweil's new book, and it really got me thinking this is something we need to start diving into. So in the talk, he emphasizes that this is the first time in history biology has had the potential to transition from being a scientific discipline to an engineering field. And that was one of the big takeaways I took from Ray Kurzweil's new book, which I just finished too, is that things that feel like solid, like objects you would buy with 3D printing and stuff like that, making it so that they're mostly digital. Like there is a real component. They'll always cost some money for these things, but you can drive the cost down so low when you have robots doing all of the mining, getting the materials, when you have drones and like a perfect pipeline for shipping around the world, when you have 3D printed assets that are coming from digital copies, then all of a sudden the cost gets so low that you can almost think of it as a digital product. And in biology, we've always had some of these kind of crude, more analog ways of understanding how biology works. But if we can use things like AlphaFold to just have an amino acid sequence and then predict how it's going to fold instead of actually measuring how it folds, things like that, including having all of the DNA and all of the genes and all of the proteins and the interactions in simulations that are accurate enough, probably powered by AI, to hunt through many combinations, they can give us answers that we would have never got through experimentation. competition. It just would have been too hard. So I'm imagining, I guess probably this time next year, the way that we always have like these new tools that allow us to like make images or make video, we're probably going to have these new tools being applied to medicine and biology in ways that will blow your mind. I just thinking that maybe 1 year is too fast, maybe 2 years is about right, but I don't know. But all this stuff, I'm just trying to think exponentially and push it forward. It's like none of these guys have seen Terminator, iRobot, etc. Yep. I'm pretty sure they saw it and then decided they wanted to be Skynet. If only he knew how regulated that industry is. The FDA will trash any AI-driven research till it's gone through rigorous testing in the lab. Yeah, I mean, maybe even 3 years. Like, I understand that when we're messing with biology, there's a lot more concerns, especially with like the way you can create viruses and the dangers that come along with that. So maybe 3 or 4 years before this is a big thing, but it's going to be a big thing eventually. Okay, so last week, Julie McCoy recommended I read this book, and I didn't even know Ray Kurzweil had a new book, but I have read all his other ones, so I was like, gotta get it right now. I powered through it last week. He still has his timeline for AGI at 2029. He's still talking about nanotechnology and biotechnology. The nanotechnology section was much more thorough, though, and I got to think about how little machines in our bloodstream might actually work, and they're not like little robotic submarines. They have to use different mechanisms to move and all sorts of stuff because just stuff's so different at that scale. He talked about the impact on society, especially with radical life extension and just the abundance of resources like I was talking about before with like things like this that you could probably 3D print out. I mean, nothing wrong with having an optimistic point of view. I just think the goal is to be kind of measured and balanced. And I think he leans a little bit towards like everything's going to be great. And historically, technology has made things better. And maybe this time isn't different, but maybe it is. I came across the first music video that was completely generated by AI that I thought was really worth watching. I mean, a lot of times I look at him for like the novelty or something, but I think this video, I was like, this music is pretty good. And the way they cut things together in this stained glass visual style just made me enjoy it and watch it on repeat a few times. You know, and to their credit, this was not Sora. This was all done with Gen 3, but it shows that if you are creative at this moment in time and can use these tools to generate something that just wasn't really like a practical CGI concept before, you can sometimes get some really unique stuff out of these systems. Like the kind of budget to build this kind of stuff practically would have just been insane. To do it digitally seems like it might not have looked that realistic, and the light would have worked as well. So here's a hot take. Actually, not even that hot of a take, because I'm pretty sure this is going to happen. I'm in the very high probabilities that there will be a woolly mammoth that doesn't exist on the planet right now in a zoo in your lifetime. So the thing about the woolly mammoth is it's not like dinosaurs, okay? Like you can't keep DNA in amber inside of a bug for 65 million years, but woolly mammoths were here not that long ago. Actually, let me check when they got extinct. How many years ago was it when the woolly mammoth went extinct? I mean, they were hunted by humans, so it can't have been that long. The woolly mammoth went extinct around 4,000 years ago, but most woolly mammoths disappeared about 10,000 years ago. Yeah, so 10,000 years ago, that's like when we started farming. But lucky for archaeologists, 52,000 years ago, a woolly mammoth died and was flash frozen, which actually turned her DNA into a fossil. So we not only learned the genetic letters that were the order that its genome was, the cold actually preserved the intricate structure also. So NVIDIA's CEO says this biology is becoming digital. We now have the genomes for a woolly mammoth, just totally well preserved, and like boom, Jurassic Park-ish things are coming soon. All right, so you have to wonder what is like the mystery of mysteries I think about all the time is like, what is going on at OpenAI behind the scenes? It sounds like not even everybody at the company gets access to a few things that maybe Sam Altman and Ilya kind of knew about because they pioneered the technology and had access, but maybe the board doesn't know about it. Maybe Microsoft doesn't know about it. How smart? How dangerous is it? All right, so what's all this strawberry hype about? Well, according to a copy of a recent internal OpenAI document, there's a project internally that uses this new strawberry model, of course, which we've never seen, and it's sort of speculative, with the aim of enabling the company's AI to not just generate answers to queries, but also plan ahead enough to navigate the internet autonomously. Ooh, that's crazy. So it's just like thinking long term. You know, I mean, that's the weird thing about ChatGPT. It's kind of like goldfish brain. It's like there for you in the context window, and then it's sort of lost again. But to really be out on the internet doing what's, quote, deep research, and if the model can see and understand the world more like we do, then that's a huge leap forward. Maybe that's Q-Star. Oh, and according to the Rutgers article here, it says the Strawberry Project was formerly known as Q-Star. So look, there's this internal all-hands meeting. OpenAI shows a demo of a research project that it claimed had a new human-like reasoning skill. Yeah, so once we build an AI that can reason long-term, and we give it another AI model that can read minds, we'll definitely have something on our hands that is very scary, uncontrollable, and we shouldn't be building, but that's just me. So what is it that we probably shouldn't be building? Well, it's this article from The New Scientist called Mind Reading AI Recreates What You're Looking At with Amazing Accuracy. Ooh, I feel bad for him just for having to look at that spider. Chair, double-headed goldfish, weird double-sided boat. So this research was introducing this new method. It's not quite a model, but it's a method overall that uses machine learning called predictive attention mechanism. And it's doing neural decoding of visual perception. So basically this PAM model is translating brain activity into visual images by dynamically figuring out which part of the brain is actually the most important towards every object that we know of, and then it can like see if those are active and then pair it up. So they use the PAM model to process brain activity from different visual areas and then transform that into a latent vector. And then they used, again, if you remember the generative adversarial systems that are like, well, the networks that have like the generator and discriminator, basically like the student and the teacher going back and forth until they build something up. And then that would eventually give you a perceived image. And the method showed pretty impressive results on 2 data sets, one with GAIN generated images and another with real photos, which now achieves the state-of-the-art reconstruction of reading brains. Good Lord, what are we building? Okay, so here you can see 10 arbitrary visual stimuli. That's this top layer. And below it is the reconstructed image. Now, the box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch isn't great. The skateboarder is not too bad. This giraffe looks fairly good. The monkey's like pretty good. Like, remember, this isn't a diffusion model. This is like reading the brain. So if you can show a horn in this position and they can get this from your brain waves, that's enough to like get you in the ballpark of reading somebody's thoughts. I mean, the light bulb, CD, and car are clear. So this might be a good time to just stop working on projects like this whole world, but we're not. We're in a race condition. We're in an arms race, so everyone's going to keep just moving forward. So we'll have to see what happens. All right, so large language models are getting a bit more creative thanks to human assistance. Stories written with AI assistants are found to be more creative, better written, and more enjoyable. I can kind of see this. I think AI is a pretty good tool for like bouncing ideas off of. Like asking for lists or quick summaries or like a bunch of objects or random thoughts is actually really nice sometimes when I'm trying to be creative. But the study found with that kind of creativity, the stories that were made were more enjoyable, they were more likely to have cool plot twists, they were better written, and they were less boring. The study had 300 participants. They were tasked with writing a short 8-sentence micro story for a targeted audience of young adults. And the researchers found that AI made the stories up to 26.6% better written and 15.2% less boring. ChatGPT 4.0, give me something to say that's not boring. Oh, that is less boring than what I was talking about. Did you know that the octopus has 3 hearts and blue blood? The octopus is also incredibly intelligent and capable of solving puzzles and escaping enclosures. Makes you wonder what other secrets the ocean holds. Right? What do you think? More creative with ChatGPT telling me what to say or before? Grimlock, any thoughts? No, nothing? All right.
Giving the disempowered more voice. What if you're not giving everyone voice? What if you're bringing everyone into the Roman Colosseum and saying, okay, let's fight it out for the entertainment of the people in the stands. And the great majority of people don't want to fight with swords. They just go quiet. And some people pick up the swords like, yes, let's go. And so the far left becomes super empowered. The far right becomes super empowered. And the center left and the center right go silent. And that's what I think is, that's, I think, a real disaster for our country.
So that comment, not only do I agree with it in the political sense, I think I agree with it in like social network sense. And then I started trying to apply it to AI, where there's going to be some kind of a race condition, whether it's like China and the US, or it's 2 different tech companies, or it's like open source versus closed source models. I don't know if it's going to be like super smart, but with different agendas that will separate, and then people in the middle will get lost again. I don't know. I think that the future has all these cool things with like nanobots and like life extension and super conscious robots that do all our work. But is there going to be a space for us to keep the middle ground too? So yeah, it was just a thought that I wanted to share. Maybe in the comments below, you could mention if you feel the same way, or if you have any strategies where like we can keep that sort of middle human ground for longer. I don't know. By the way, he's got a great book. I just started reading it. It's called The Anxious Generation. I'm on chapter 1, so I don't have any thoughts yet. But Jonathan does a deep dive into what it was like for kids that were born after the millennials. So like 1997 to 2012, and how they grew up with the internet. Like they understood like swiping on iPhones and how it's like getting to making them really anxious and just having this different worldview. Because that's the generation whose culture will probably impact AI in the deepest way, I would say. They'll probably take the mantle from some of these companies and help integrate it into society, be the first adopters. So I want to work harder to get my head around how they think in whole more, because I'm just so much more connected to like the millennial generation. But anyways, so Andreessen Horowitz, one of the most active venture capital investors in artificial intelligence, has actually decided to buy their own GPUs. So this makes a ton of sense. It's almost like they're becoming a company that's acquiring companies, but realistically they're venture capitalists, but I guess they want to own, they already own like a lot of media stuff too. So I know they're thinking a little bit more organized and a little bit different scale than normally you would think of as investors. But in this case, they secured 20,000 of the NVIDIA H100's graphics units, which are really hard to get. Those are the ones that Elon Musk wants really bad, and everybody at Meta had gotten first, and it's like help them get their open source edge. So I guess if they're courting a company and they're like, hey, we'll give you some money, plus we'll give you access to all these H100s, they can just start getting some of the best AI companies under their umbrella. It's an interesting move, capitalism at its finest. So there's a new AI lie detector tool that can accurately identify lies 67% of the time, compared to humans who get it right 50-50. So you think that tool would be awesome, because like when you can tell if somebody's lying, maybe it'll create a more honest world. But when people used the tool, they made more accusations of each other, which started to raise some concerns with the researcher about increasing mistrust by releasing the tool. And that was an interesting thought. This is the kind of knock-on effects that sometimes when you build a tool that seems like it's going to solve a problem, you don't always think about until it's out there in the wild. So you can imagine how a tool like this would be touted as AI promising to combat misinformation. But then its widespread use could erode the fundamental human assumption of truthfulness. So this research was done with a bunch of caveats, and the challenge basically lied in the balance of benefits for better lie detection versus the potential harm of social bonds and trust. So I don't know if it's really a good idea to release it or not, or how to implement it, but I do know that 67% accuracy that it got is the worst it's ever going to be, and we'll probably see many, many more increments upwards on that scale. So get ready for a future where there is a tool that knows if you're lying or not. All right, big news in the quantum computing world. New quantum computer smashes the quantum supremacy record by a factor of 100, and it does it while consuming 30,000 times less power. So this is the 56-qubit H2-1 computer, and it has broken the previous record of quantum supremacy. Look at how pretty it is. It looks like something you would put in a sci-fi movie. That's crazy. So it can produce results without an error 35% of the time. All right, so I'll read you some things. I don't totally have my head around what they mean, but in case they do to you, these upgrades enable the H2 to operate with up to 56 qubits, boasting a high conductivity and 2-qubit gate fidelity of 99.843%. This advance, for whatever it's worth, can give random circuit sampling much higher connected geometries. It can achieve performance levels that are challenging for current classical algorithms to simulate. But the point is, it can perform on those algorithms that classical computers just can't. And we are now in a world where these quantum computers are pushing past what even the biggest supercomputers that are built classically can do. Okay, so I want to talk about this article. It's called How AI Will Solidify a Two-Tier Society, and it was written on Medium by Martin Knapp. Right, so this is a conversation about what things in our society should be public goods, which should be privatized. Things like having private property, a lot of people believe is a big part of why we've built a more stable economy. But you can imagine in another world, maybe it's not like that. And maybe it's more of a shared good in a more, socialist society. And that maybe could have been better too. We have this conversation a lot with healthcare. There's some countries that move towards a socialized model, and in some ways those are better. But here in America, we have a lot of people without the kind of basic needs, but we also have some of the best doctors in the world and some of the most advanced technology. So we should ask the question about AI. Like, should it be thought of more as a public good? Should it be built by private companies that need to recoup their cost, and we should think about it more in terms of market dynamics. And what about public education? I mean, it seems like it's a really good thing for the government to put money into that, right? We need sidewalks, we need streets. Education means that at least everybody has some opportunity to learn basic things. But AI is about to upend education as a whole. I mean, what would the value of even the best school be compared to something that's with you 24/7 and can teach you exactly what you need to know in exactly the way that you need it? So in that case, should that be a public good, like when it comes to education, or do we not want the government getting involved with that too? Maybe the price of large language models is so cheap that education should all of a sudden become privatized simply because the cost is reasonable. Or does the government subsidize a basic $20 a month for ChatGPT for everybody in the country, and then they call that the education budget, or something that's a little bit more structured? So Martin brings up in this article how things like healthcare access could diminish, especially when it's tied to employment, or it could exaggerate inequalities. And then if you think about the rise of AI-driven information platforms that might restrict access to in-depth knowledge, well, that might make people more dependent on generic knowledge. Like, what if certain models are trained with specific data and then people have an advantage that's not shared with the whole country or the whole world? You know, and right now, the rich have all sorts of benefits. They get safety that some people don't. They get quality of opportunities that some people don't. And if there's a shift to a two-tier system where only the wealthy can afford quality intelligence and critical thinking and creativity, it's a big gap. It's a much bigger gap than we've had in the past. Okay, I'll keep this one quick because it's a little bit off topic, but you know, I really love bees, right? Like, I just think that bumblebees are like my spirit animal. You know, bumblebees have a division of labor, the distributed roles. They're basically like parallel operations. Bumblebees communicate through dancing and pheromones, basically multi-agent systems. Bumblebees as a whole can learn from their environment, a lot like all of the nodes inside of a neural network can learn from their environment as a whole. You know, the whole hive, it's an amazing kind of, super intelligence to all the little individual bees. It's crazy stuff. But now it turns out that the climate crisis is cooking baby bumblebees in their nests. So whether they live in the Arctic or the tropics, it doesn't matter. Bumblebee babies appear to have the nest temperature requirements that are not being met. So Forbes wrote about how the Netherlands is losing its insect-pollinated flowers because these poor little bumblebee numbers are declining around the globe. I mean, I don't know what I expect you to do about it. Like, maybe go start raising bumblebees in your backyard or something if you want to. Feel free. But it's just something I felt really bad about. There's 250 species of bees around the world, 49 in the United States. And we've already lost 2 of those species. Gone. The whole species is gone. So unfortunately, they're very susceptible to temperature. Bumblebee nests have to stay between 28 and 32 degrees Celsius, which is 82 to 89 degrees Fahrenheit, for the larvae to develop properly. But these rising temperatures, they're causing the nest to overheat, which is lethal. So we need something, little beehives and air conditioners, or I don't know. Researchers suggest that we get ground penetrating radar to start studying nest temperatures so we can see where the stress levels are too much. All right, let's start there then, if that's what the researchers want. Just wanted to put that on your radar. All right, so this is another thing that I actually didn't cover too much, but when we were talking about that Q-star or strawberry thing, we're getting to the point now where there isn't really like a cutoff date on some of these models. They're becoming more just constant, like the same way our brain. Every single night, I guess you could say, we sort of like cut off and reconsolidate, but it's a much more kind of up and down kind of system than it is like off and then like new, off and new, like hard cutoff points. So you can kind of imagine that, the GPT-5 of the future is just out there reading the internet. It's out there like taking in the information that we're putting in it when we're talking to it. And then it's constantly taking that and running these simulations in this little arena to see what should stick and what's normal and how it should tune itself for the next day. And then it just automatically tunes itself in real time. So this area learning is a method that involves iterative training strategies like supervised fine-tuning, direct preference optimization, and proximal policy optimization. And then the results are evaluated at this other model that they're calling the wizard arena as an offline test that predicts performance rankings accurately, and the process significantly boosts efficiency and performance. And it's also just a cost-effective replacement for humans. So there's, you got your AI judge over here, you got your different models competing. Evaluate wizard, look at that, boom, boom, boom. Don't even get it, but very cool. Overview of arena learning, post-training data flywheel, and wizard arena evaluation. This is definitely not what it represents, but doesn't that kind of look like these are the gladiators and these are all the people in the Roman Colosseum, like cheering them on? Writing, role play, humanities, coding, STEM, math, reasoning. Whoa, let the games begin. All right, next up, let's listen. I was going to say, let's talk about audio, but let's listen to audio. FunAudioLLM, voice understanding for generation foundation models for natural iteration between humans and LLMs. Nice. Fit the whole abstract in the title there, bro. So FunAudioLLM is a set of different models that come into the Alibaba group. It's a Chinese thing. And they're designed to improve natural voice interactions between humans and large language models. So in this paper, they've introduced two main models. One's called Sense Voice and another one's called Cozy Voice. And Sense Voice is for multilingual speech recognition, emotion detection, and audio event detection. Okay, so that's the one that goes for all the different languages, 50 languages in total. And then the other model, Cozy Voice, is focused on generating natural speech, allowing for control over the language, voice style, and speaker identity. So the models have been open sourced, so let's give it a listen. All right, so let's start with some emotional voice chat.
今天的精神状态如何呀？
今天特别开心。
哎呦，听到你这么开心，我也很高兴呢。发生什么好事啦？
我们要发布一个新的语音大模型呢。
哦，太棒了！听说你们要发布新的语音大模型。
Oh my gosh, that thing was an emotional bomb. But I don't know what that was. It's not a language I can speak, so it just seems like that emotional context was definitely in there. Let's try expressive audiobook.
神雕侠侣第9回，百计必敌。杜双正子黄吉听他忽谓傻话，怒道：“
傻蛋，又胡说什么？”
杨过笑道：“
咱们来玩拜天地成亲，你扮新娘子好不好？那才叫美呢。”脸上披了红布。
All right, first the man was kind of like, yeah, then the woman was like, yeah, she's got some emotion. But then that third guy came in and that guy was an emotional roller coaster. Oh, look, there's one thing in English. Let's listen to this.
The tribal chieftain called for the boy and presented him with 50 pieces of gold.
Well, it's got an Indian accent. I mean, nothing wrong with that, but isn't this thing 50 languages? Why do they have accents? And why Indian if it came out of Alibaba? I don't know. Very sus. Which is a perfect segue into the next paper. Multilingual large language models and the curse of not dimensionality, but multilinguality. Multilinguality. I don't know how to say it. Multilingualness. All right, so here's the deal. When you're building these multimodality systems, right, like GPT-4o, where you can have text or visual or audio inputs, there's like a certain blending or complication that comes with the whole system. Like if you remember, there was the prompts that could be jailbreaking it in text form, and then when you started saying them in audio form, they worked again. So you have to like re-protect, some of those vulnerabilities in every modality. Makes sense to me that maybe you could write those same vulnerabilities on a sheet of paper, take a photo of it, and then it might actually get through in a way that maybe the audio and the text didn't. So it just becomes a much more complicated thing. And when you add 50 languages, like in our last model, or lots of different languages, you do start to end up with quite the problem, like quite the complexity to think about. And they call this the curse of multilinguality. Linguality? Yeah, like multilingual, right? Linguality, I guess so. Where adding more languages can dilute performance due to the linguistic diversity and data sparsity. So to counter that, that's where this paper comes in. Situations like modular architectures can be used, novel training techniques, which are discussed in the paper. They're used to try to improve the efficiency and adaptability of these like multi-language systems. So yeah, the paper itself actually outlines a bunch of different problems that we have to deal with too, just to get researchers thinking about how complex it is and how powerful it is when we do have all of the world's languages in a single model. So next, let's talk about this archive paper, A Peek into Token Bias. Large language models are not yet genius reasoners, unless maybe you're Q-Star or Strawberry. But of course, that's unreleased research, so I wouldn't know. All right, so this paper is diving into whether or not large language models like GPT-4 actually understand logic, or if they just rely on token biases. Right, and when we're talking about bias in terms of a token, we're talking about a special word or word fragment and like what that meaning has when it's digested from its position, when it brings in the entire internet and it sees it multiple times in various positions and then, tunes the weights of the model. Like, does it understand the logic, or did it approximate the logic and it's not reliable? They're kind of different things. And they found that while these models can sometimes solve classic logic problems, they often do so by recognizing patterns rather than through genuine reasoning. So I don't think they do. Now, there's some thought that you might get the kind of emergent property just by training that enough. It kind of, I guess, could grok in a way into something that's like, oh, now there's a hierarchy that makes sense to me and is stable. And then all of a sudden you get logic to click in. But it seems like even at the point of GPT-4, that hasn't happened. And that's a speculation. That might not ever happen too. We might need a completely different architecture to get anything like genuine reasoning. But the study suggests that LLM's performance improvements are mainly due to exploiting token biases, the patterns that they're finding, but not because they're truly getting better at reasoning. So there's still a long way to go before these models can think like humans, according to the researchers. Okay, so this is a new community that David Shapiro has put up. It's called the New Era Pathfinders, and instead of Discord, he's doing it on School, SKOOL.com. And in it, I had a conversation with this guy, and he works for Wolfram, I guess, Wolfram Alpha, the tool online, and Stephen Wolfram's company. And he was talking about this concept that there could be a language between humans and large language models that could be more efficient than the English language, which we already use. And that just got me thinking, what if, and I'm just totally in like what if world here, what if we start building a new language? It's a language that large language models could help us build, but we could use artificial intelligence to come up with like the best language possible. Like, what's the optimal amount of characters that you should have in a language? Like, how should you deal with like past, present, and future tense? How should you deal with like male and female gender dynamics in the language? Should it be like truly logical, like so it fits together more like mathematics? Or should it maybe have these interesting nuances that make it much more like human-like and easy to communicate? But what if we develop a new language and then we adopt it like in a worldwide way, something that this is one of those things where you could probably bring China and the US and Russia and everybody to the table and say, hey, this language works for everybody. We all benefit from better communication. And then we just start offering it in all public schools as a potential second language people could learn if they wanted. I mean, maybe we're at the place now where large language models will just be so good that we can just translate and everybody can kind of have their own language, and whenever they want to, it's just fluid. But maybe something more efficient. Like if I grew up learning, I only unfortunately speak one language, but if I had two, I feel like I would have more ways to communicate. If I had a more robust lexicon, I could have more ways to communicate. But what if I could just get more for the same effort because the language itself was constructed better? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down below. It's a little bit of a crazy one out there, but I just thought I'd throw it out there. All right, so I launched my very first video with a sponsor in it. Hopefully that video does well. I'm getting paid based on how many thousands of views it gets. But even if it doesn't, I'd love to hear if you guys thought it was okay. I mean, it's like a 45-second break in the middle. It's for the short form platform, which I think is like a great product. I totally think what they're doing is worth the value. And, it helps offset the costs of just doing this channel. But the last video, Sora Triggers Hollywood, did pretty well, I guess, to 3.9. I guess it's a little bit on the lower end of my average, but I got 29 subscribers, nothing to complain about. The engagement was good. On day one, we got a 7.5% click-through rate and it went down. So maybe putting the Toys R Us thing in there. I also didn't make myself very bright, so maybe it was a little bit harder to see my face. And of course, the toy that I chose, I used an AI generator, GPT-4o for it. And look, it has these two characters. Do you see like Hobbs writing Grimlock? Isn't that cool? So I feel like maybe I was just so excited to throw them into the thumbnail. I didn't like use Jeffrey the giraffe or whatever. I probably would have got more clicks. I don't know. Let's see. So we ended up with 100% male. We got 2.4% of the 18 to 24-year-olds. Looks like the average age is pretty high on this one too. 45 to 54. Maybe Toys R Us is like a brand that's more recognizable by an older generation. I don't know. Where do kids nowadays get their toys? Just like Roblox or something? All right, probably best comment in the comments section. Hey Seuss, I wish my phone had even 1% of that dog's durability. You're going in. Definitely a big thanks to Mr. MD2CL. Beat that YouTube algorithm. $10. That's a ton. That's like the biggest super chat I ever got. So thank you. Look, if you look at old footage from the early 1900s, they had some crazy machines with gyroscopes in them. Okay, perfect lyric. And glad you talked about WebSim. We'll put this one in there too.
Of that dog's durability.
Ooh. Feel like I'm in a warehouse rave. Oh! That's a hot jam. Hit subscribe. We'll see you in the next AI video. Peace.